right, Mike Tannenbaum is here. Get Up, all the ESPN shows, radio on Sundays with myself and Justin Pugh. Is that the highlight of your week, Mike? Let me rephrase that. Is that the highlight of your career?
Without question. I mean, we can talk about, the penultimate stops of my career, but in all seriousness, I got to tell you, we were on, today is Tuesday, 2 days ago on Sunday, and Kev, that was just three guys hanging out watching epic football. I don't know about you, but 4 hours was like that for me.
I would just call that great hosting by me. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm just a game changer as far as that goes. I'm like a great quarterback. I just put people in position. I just listen. I mean, you weren't going to say it, so I had to say it. All right, so let's get to a couple things. Oh, so go ahead.
So Kevin Clark hosting. Jaden Daniels, 53 yards, Noah Brown, about the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, thank you for saying that. Thank you for finally speaking up. I was just waiting for you to say it, and I'm a big game player, and that's why ESPN Radio works on Sundays from 1 to 4. Although we're on 1 to 5 right now because of baseball, which is apparently still going on. All right, so the Jets, complete mess, and I want actionable items here because everybody keeps saying, oh, they're. It's ownership, it's Joe Douglas, it's Robert Saleh, it's Aaron Rodgers. They gave up too much power from Aaron Rodgers. And we can do all that and we can talk in circles because everybody is. But to me, this team needs fixing, tangible fixing. If you are in charge of fixing the Jets today, you do what?
Kevin, one of the many lessons Coach Parcells taught me was basically when you go to a gas station, you're filling up your car for hopefully a long time. And that's really what roster building is. As you get towards Labor Day and sort of like transitioning preseason, regular season, not to say that you can't make in-season moves. And certainly we can talk about, hey, should they go get Shelby Harris or Dalvin Tomlinson, two interior guys from a disappointing Cleveland Brown team? And that would certainly help a run defense, which has been awful. But to me, the best solutions are within. And to be specific, I would take Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. I'd have them on the field together. That accomplishes a number of things. Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great. He is banged up. Get the ball out of his hands a little bit more, at least for the next few weeks. And your defense is struggling. Maybe it's because Jeff Ulbrich is now a little bit more as a head coach. But I think that allows them to capture the line of scrimmage, control the game, because right now they have no way to control the game.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And going forward, would you try to bring Aaron back? How would you kind of view that? Just because – if you have a player like that, he's going to have so much influence, whether that's implied or not, whether it's direct. He's always going to have influence. Just do you try to run it back next year?
I don't. And Kevin, if you and I were running the Jets, we'd sitting here saying we have an aging all-time great, but he's going to be 42. Clearly, he is a skilled, diminished athlete, and I've been around Brett Favre at the end, Vinny Testaverde. I've worked with Dan Marino, been with Brett Favre. All those quarterbacks will tell you they can keep throwing it, but it's their lower body mobility. And we're seeing it with Aaron. He's not stepping into throws. He's trying to avoid the rush. So I would start to scour, and I would try to look at teams like Indy, who signs a veteran like a Joe Flacco or a Jameis Winston, and then do that and draft a player and put as much resources to the short and long-term, aspect of the position.
I know this is a huge question, and when I wrote it, I'm surprised when I emailed it to you last night. You didn't say, "Hey, that's a big question." You and Rex had so much success. You made 2 AFC Championship games. That era of Jets football, and I was around it. I was a 22-year-old reporter, just trying to chase you around to get Darrelle Revis contract updates. Meanwhile, you were at the diner, just getting it all done. But for me, that era had so much juice. And the collection of talent was special. And if I was a Jets fan, and Jets fans do cherish that era, but if I was a Jets fan, I would get some of those players tattooed on my arm. There was so much belief there. Why did you guys have success? You and Rex have success when before and after it just wasn't there, Mike? Can you put your finger on it?
Yeah, I think there was a few things. First of all, I know he gets a lot of credit now, but it did start with ownership. Woody Johnson gave us all the resources, which I believe he still does today, but obviously I'm not there. We identified a really good nucleus through the draft, the Revises, the Burkishaw, David Harris, Nick Mangold, on and on. Rex brought in, sort of the gravitas of creating this aura of association. So guys like LaDainian Tomlinson and Jason Taylor, they wanted to be there. And then I think the best single moment he did as a coach was when we got blown out on Monday Night Football, 45-3, and at the press conference, he's like, if we play tomorrow, we kick their ass. And everyone's like, come on, Rex. And sure enough, 6 weeks later, we go up to New England in a playoff game, and we beat them pretty handily. So he had the confidence. It was sort of like this perfect storm of good talent with confidence and a really good coaching staff on both sides of the ball. And like anybody else that has success in the NFL, we had some good fortune. So it was really a combination of all those things.
Last thing on the Jets before we get into some more big picture NFL stuff. You hear sometimes from people around the Jets or now with the Jets that the Jets are very reactive to the media, and they're almost like old school, almost like 1990s. Like you see it more in baseball now where it's like, oh, it's a trade deadline, got to make a move. And they're reacting to whether it's to Twitter, whether it's to the tabloids, whether it's to what pundits say on Sunday Night Football, doesn't matter. Do you agree with that? Is this something that needs to be changed going forward?
Well, I'd say this, like generally speaking, running a team in New York, it's always like times 10. When it's great, look, I was at Times Square at rallies, a lot of adulation. And when it was bad, I was on the back page of the paper, not because of my good luck, so you have to embrace that. And sure, like, the expression Coach Parcells was like, don't have rabbit ears, don't react to everything, stay the course, have a plan. And you have to sort of like absorb the highs and lows. And that's what good organizations do. Now, you do need to be opportunistic, like I think we were, be it Braylon Edwards or Santoni Holmes, Antonio Cromartie. But you can't be reactionary in terms of like, we're going to appease the masses for the next 10 minutes.
You did give great press conferences. I just want to say, I think about a line you gave, and I haven't said this to you all the time. I think about it all the time. It was after the 2010 draft, I think. I was in the press conference room. And someone said, what was today like? And he said, it was about 10,000 calories. And I think about this all the time because you were just sitting around. You were like, we were just eating the whole day. That was a way to find it. And now on Sundays, I sit around and I think today was a 10,000. If I would describe my day today, it would be about 10,000 calories. I'm just eating Taco Bell. I'm doing the whole thing. So that was, you knew how to use quips with the New York media when they were so desperate for it.
Well, look, I try to humanize things. And that candidly just came with time and candidly some success. You could say that after you've had a few wins under your belt, not as a 36-year-older that's just happy to be there.
Totally agree. All right, big picture stuff. Who has the best roster in the NFL right now?
The Detroit Lions. And when you look at it, they have no holes. And, Kevin, if we're being fair, Jared Goff is having an MVP season.
100%. I said
if we just throw out the reputation and look at how they're playing football, he's playing great football. They have two great backs in Montgomery and Gibbs. Their offensive line is second to none. Then you look at, we don't even talk about Jameson Williams, who arguably is the second fastest player behind Tyreek Hill, St. Brown. And then on the other side of the ball, look, you're giving them benefit of the doubt with Hutchinson's injury. Davenport's been out, but Ali McNeil's a really good player. And then, Jack Campbell, Branch is going to be a great player. And then they threw a lot of resources at the corner position, be it, training for Carlton Davis or drafting, Arnold and extra. So, like, to me, they've done a lot of different things, be it trade, free agency, that they deserve a lot of credit for.
Is there a lesson to be learned? Because my thing with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell is they didn't care. Okay, Jahmyr Gibbs, fine, great, first-round pick. Linebacker, first-round pick. Jameson Williams coming off an injury. Nobody wanted to touch him that high. Fine, we're going to take him. He's going to be good in 2 years. There's a confidence there that I don't think, especially Brad Holmes being a first-time GM, Dan Campbell being a first-time head coach, a lot of people poking holes from the outside. There's a confidence there that I find, frankly, astounding.
Yeah, one of the privileges I had was working with Dan Campbell, who's our interim head coach in Miami for 12 games. I saw with him, he benched good players. Jay Ajayi at the time, one of our better running backs. Like, he didn't care. The best players were going to play. And I think where Brad and Dan deserve a lot of credit is their sort of systematic approach. The verb I always say is like, you got to scour. And that's sort of like the approach they've taken is they've made trades. They're not scared. And they do what's best for them. And I give them a ton of credit. And I think the Goff trade really is sort of like symbolic for the whole franchise. Like, he was a throw-in on a trade, and now they have him playing great football. And that's Mark Brunell, their quarterback coach. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, deserve a ton of credit.
So Ben Johnson told me a story. Were you in the room when Dan Campbell interviewed? And I think, didn't he take chairs and start? Were you in this? You know what I'm talking about? He was demonstrating technique on the chairs. Were you in that room?
Yeah. I mean, basically, working with Dan, and he very much of a hands-on guy. he had a great staff in Miami. It was Ben and Zach Taylor, and obviously, the rest is history, what's gone on. But, there's a lot of Dan Campbell stories. One thing that's really important for your mental health, write this down. Do not, and I repeat, do not ever go into a weight room when Dan Campbell's in there. You will feel terrible about yourself. I can't tell you how many times I would go down for a workout. He'd be in there and be like, you know what? I'm going to go take the executive walk and knock out a few phone calls. I mean, it was extremely humbling. I mean, the guy could go take some reps today. He was like, hey, Mike, come on in here. Let's talk and work out. And I'm dipping. I'm like, Dan, I'm good, really. I got 20 pounds in my hands to, it was really embarrassing. I would just say, he's from a different gene pool than, your typical, middle-aged front office people.
Oh my God. The image of you, and I'm sorry, Mike, I love you. The image of you walking into the gym and seeing Dan Campbell and just turning right around is something special.
Dan, you need anything? I'm going to go to Starbucks. You want anything? I'm going to go for a walk. I'll pass Starbucks. Get in here. Let's go.
Wait, he was trying to he was trying to give you pep talks and you wouldn't take it?
Yeah, he's like, we can knock out a couple things, and he's got the dip and shoulder. I'm like, I'm good. I'm like, I gotta call a couple of agents back anyway, so let's catch up later.
Yeah, you just reminded me I have to go to Starbucks and call some agents up. Okay, got it. That's amazing. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, so this, again, this is not a Jet-specific thing. I don't want anybody to think it is. You mentioned Woody giving the resources. Is there, if you could wave a wand and have owners do something different with how they run their franchises, a mistake that they broadly make, where do you start, Mike?
Yeah, I would say a couple of threshold sort of guidelines. Number one is mental toughness. Believe in your process of hiring people, period, underline, boldface. And once you do that, stand shoulder to shoulder with them and give them every conceivable resource and support for them through thick and thin. Because, look, Kev, 48 hours ago, the endings of the Baltimore-Cleveland game, which our esteemed colleague Justin Pugh predicted before the game.
He did.
But in all seriousness, you look at those games, the Miami game, last play of the game, Jet-Patriot game, all the way down, obviously the Commander game, and the difference between winning and losing is so small. And you think about Pittsburgh with 3 coaches over 40 plus years, that matters. For example, I think what Stan Kroenke's number one to me moment was they gave over $100 million in guaranteed money, Sean McVay and Les Snead, to Jared Goff. And they walked in not that long after, it was 14 months later, said, hey, we have a better opportunity. We made a $100 million mistake. And Kroenke was like, go get them. And that's why they deserve to win. And to me, not every owner is going to react that way. And that's why, the reactionary owners are always resetting. And, you look at Kevin Demoff at the top of that organization, it's been strong and steady. And, that's just one of the examples. I know, for example, New Orleans, Sean Payne got the headlines. I like Mickey Loomis a lot. Yep. It's not always perfect there, but Mickey, strong and steady. I know people will criticize their cap situation, but obviously they've had a plan there for a long time.
What's amazing to me, and I think you hit the nail on the head, obviously, but what's amazing to me is whether it's Kevin Demoff, Baltimore is really good about this. We talk about reacting to the media. You go into those facilities, and the narrative about the team is nowhere to be found. And they, you cannot find it. If you go to Baltimore on January 3rd, I promise you there is no talk, there's no feeling, there's no inkling of, oh, is Lamar going to win the big one? That's all talk radio. And the worst facilities are reactive to that. The worst facilities let you feel the pressure. And if you talk to Kevin Demoff at any point, it just seems like they're just a regular old business doing things the way that things should be done. And that's good process.
And to that point, Kevin, I always said, be it the Dolphins or the Jets, if I'm doing my job well and you flew in from outer space and you were talking to me the day after the game, hopefully you didn't know if we won or lost. And,
right.
I wasn't always perfect. Look, I'm human and, losses got to me. But that's what the great leaders do. And, Eric DaCosta I would put up there with any of them, 100%. just sort of, as you said, the routine and process. And that's where, I think if you look at the great companies in our country, they're opportunistic, but they're also, the Amazons of the world, they believe in what they're doing and they build on their success. But if they have a bad quarter, they just don't blow things up. They ask themselves hard questions and try to get better. But they're not changing, C-suite members, every quarter.
100% agree with you. All right, so the trade deadline is next week. I have two questions about it. We'll start here. If you're every team is different, I know, but if you're a GM right now and you're just calling about top end talent, who is the player you're most aggressive on right now?
Oh, this is easy. It's Myles Garrett, and I'm Brad Holmes, and I'm calling up Cleveland. I'm saying, look, we are not negotiating. Myles Garrett is a Detroit Lion. Here it is. Just fill in the paperwork and let me know. Look, does it matter if it's 2 or 3 ones? Like, if I'm Detroit, Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, I know what they said, but let's assume he's not coming back. But imagine Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson in 2025.
Yeah.
To me, he's outcome determinative of them legitimately having a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. So that price to me isn't too high. Like, I would do everything I could if I was Detroit to try to pry Myles Garrett from them.
Why don't we see big trades at the trade deadline? Because every year we think it's going to be somebody. And listen, there has been Jalen Ramsey a few years ago. We've seen it where stars go, but it's not an every year thing. And I think a lot of times we talk about a guy like Myles Garrett, immediately whenever that's floated, it's knocked down. Oh no, we're not going to trade this guy. We're not going to trade that guy. And I think there was some Dexter Lawrence, some teams wish casting Dexter Lawrence is going to be available. I promise you, the Giants don't want to lose the best player right now. They're trying to build something, but we just don't see that level of trade. Why is that from someone on the inside?
Because every week, players are putting their bodies on the line. And if you're Kevin Stefanski on the Wednesday morning meeting to say, like, hey, we got 3 1s and 2 2s and player X, they're all looking at each other saying, like, well, we're not going to be here next year. Yeah. You're probably not going to be here. So, now, like, if he walks in on Wednesday, he could be like, hey, guess what? Jameis Winston looked good. Our defense played well. We just beat, our biggest rival. We got hope, and that gets you through the season. When I was part of the general manager advisory committee, we actually got the trade deadline pushed back. I always felt philosophically there shouldn't be a trade deadline because if an owner like Jimmy Haslam says, you know what, if somebody wants to overpay us for Myles Garrett and give us 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, and whatever, I should be able to make that decision for our franchise, not the NFL. So it's been moved back, but the trade deadline is really – it's there because they don't want teams to be non-competitive in the back half of the season.
Interesting. Who's the best player you ever tried to trade for?
Well, mission accomplished, Brett Favre.
There you go. So, wow, yeah, no, I'm thinking about that now. Wow, yeah, that's right. I was hoping that you try to trade for the 5 other guys and you got swatted down. You didn't even call about like some superstars around the deadline. We're just like, hey, would you be available?
Oh, I called all the time, but we were 8-3 with Brett before we got hurt, and that season probably will be written differently. But I think if you ask like the Damian Woodies of the world, that 08 team with Favre was, in some people's opinion, better than the 09 team that went to the championship game.
I never thought about that. I mean, it was that era of Jets football was something special, and it wouldn't have taken much for them to get really deep in the playoffs in that regard. But obviously, if fell off, you lose the Week 17 game to the Dolphins. The rest is history. Okay, so Jerry Jones. I hate shoehorning in Cowboys talk, but I do think legitimately the discussion on him is really strange. And we had the great story from Caitlin Kaler last week about how he gives facility tours. And Jerry Jones basically saying, I'm just so thankful for the attention that we're getting. And and Will McClay is a part of it, they draft so well. And then they don't do anything to help that roster on top of it. I don't think the coaching is good enough. I don't think the free agency work is good enough. I don't think the contract work is good enough. So I'm just going to put it to you. Jerry Jones is the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. Is he good at that?
I think he's a good GM, but could be a lot better because of the job Will McClay does with that foundation. And I think if they looked at it over 5 years, I think it was your line on Get Up Kev. Like, the Cowboys got more expensive this year. They didn't get better. And if we were running the Cowboys, it was reasonable to say, like, look at the receiver market. So we're going to go first with CeeDee Lamb, not last. Or here's the quarterback market. And by the way, I think you could approach that somewhat differently. But anyway, like, you could probably save, whatever it was, $5 to $8 million. And, like, that's Derrick Henry. Like, so go get those guys signed ASAP. Don't wait. And then Derrick Henry, of all the moves, just think about, like, that allows you to develop a younger offensive line, takes pressure off of your defense. And look, I'm not saying they're in first place, but they certainly look better. So I think Jerry Jones, I think the problem is, like, one of the questions we would ask a coaching candidate is, give me an example of when you've walked into a meeting and someone's changed your mind.
Yeah.
And just your body language alone is really interesting. And if I was interviewing Jerry Jones to be the GM of the Dallas Cowboys, I would say, Jerry, in this current construct, the way you guys are put together, give me an example specifically over the last couple of years that you walked in a meeting with position A, but you listened to the people that work for you, and then you coalesced around position B.
First of all, I think the examples are when his children rip the draft card out of his hand when he's trying to get Johnny Football or Paxton Lynch. But if I may, and obviously job interviews are somewhat private, but who's given the best answer to that question? And what is the best answer to that question?
Yeah, like, Rex was great. Yeah. Candidly, Dan Campbell was really good. Like, and we saw it with Dan for, again, unusually, he was the interim head coach for 12 games, but, he deferred a lot, ironically, to Zach Taylor and Ben Johnson, did a lot of things at the line of scrimmage. And then defensively, we had a couple of different guys, but Lou Anarumo did a really good job. And I just, I saw somebody that was with Dan, even though he was an interim, he was comfortable in his own skin. He was a good listener and always was. And I think what we get sort of like underrated in our sort of like modern day football is I think we're way too scheme specific and we have to be much more matchup specific. And I think Dan really believes in that where, hey, there are some games where, hey, we got Gibbs and Montgomery. We're going to run it out of 22 personnel. We're going to, clearly against Dallas, they're going to run, and that's an extreme example. But we saw this past Sunday, they, despite scoring 50 points, they only threw it 15 times. Yeah. And I think that's the essence of being a great strategist. Like, I worked for Coach Belichick twice, and the expression that football is a game of chess on grass, he's the best example of it. It's a series of, minor decisions that you win at that over time, that aggregate gives you, the win. And that's why, like, he's as proud to talk to you about Matthew Slater as he is anybody else because of the field position he helped create for so many years.
It's interesting because I had to talk with someone who's a GM in the last couple of weeks, and we were talking about the Chiefs, and I was saying, they need to start blowing teams out or whatever. And he said, you're thinking about the NFL the wrong way. In the NFL, the talent gap is so small that a team like the Chiefs literally just have a 51-49 advantage on every single play. And then over 70 plays, you end up with a 4-point lead. You end up with a 5-point lead because of that. And it kind of changed. This is in college football. This is in college football where you just say roster talent versus roster talent. This team's going to win 35-6. That's not how it goes. It's you have a 51% advantage. And then that's why special teams, as you just said, 10 yards is important. Hidden yardage, all of those little things. Like, there are literally hundreds of thousands of things in one game that contribute towards winning.
You know what pissed me off on Sunday night's game? So Dallas is winning at halftime.
Yeah.
And the very first play of the second half, their great kicker kicks the ball short of the landing zone. So it's at the 40-yard line. On the ensuing kickoff, they try a reverse on the road. Mm-hmm. They call it a forward pass. They're backed up at the 11. Mm-hmm. So San Francisco's first drive of the second half was at the 40. Theirs was at the 11. And I think John Fossil's a good coach. So I don't mean just to beat him up. But those two decisions, to me, had as much to do with the outcome of the game because imagine if Dallas was able to, get some momentum to start the second half. And it seemed like those two drives and where they started, it just snowballed from there.
Completely agree. All right, last thing. It's called one rep back. We do it with everybody. Normally, if it's a player, it's it's J.J. Watt saying he let Tony Romo get out of the sack, Romo threw the 50-yard touchdown, all of that stuff. Sometimes when it's the media, we have, hey, how you get a take back. And when it's an executive, it's a move back. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be in the draft, free agency, whatever. Anything you just like to have a do-over with, redo with a better process.
Well, I would say, too, one is I wish I had stayed in the weight room with Dan Campbell because that's what I would look like now.
But, exactly right. Hey, listen, what they say, the best time to plant a tree is 15 years ago. The second best time is today. It is only 12:20, man. You can go out there and you can fly to Detroit. The weight room is open in Detroit.
When you see me on Sunday, if I look and feel differently, please acknowledge it.
I will.
But in all, I would say drafting Vernon Golston, 6th pick overall. Obviously, that didn't work out. But it's really more of the lesson we were playing a 3-4 at the time, and to take somebody in the top 10 and ask them to do something I'd never done before was just, bad judgment on our part. And I think the late, great George Young, who was a longtime GM in the NFL, it sounds so simple, Kevin, but you take great players from good schools and ask them to do exactly what they were doing, and that's going to cut down on your margin for error, and you'll give yourself a much better chance to be successful. So that one's kept me up at night for, 15, 20 years, but I'll get over it.
Who is the player now that you look at and say, that would have been a good selection?
Well, TJ Watt, we took Charles Harris over TJ Watt.
Oh, yeah.
That's another one that certainly wish I could have back.
Yeah, certainly. It's funny. I was talking to GM a couple months ago, training camp, and he had a similar situation where they took a risk on a player, didn't work out. And from then on, he said, you know what? A new rule, told his scouts, no more risks on the first 2 days of the draft. No more flyers, no more anything. If you got a risk, we will see you on day 3. But there will be no more projecting. There'll be no more, this guy's a character thing. There'll be, this guy's an athlete. He doesn't know how to, we got to, teach him how to do this. No, first 2 days are for players where we know what they can do. And I think that's a pretty good philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds boring, but that's how you build really solid rosters, like the Baltimore Ravens, who take multiple tight ends in the 4th round. That's rock solid. And then Isaiah likely, takes the next step, and that's just good planning. And, they do a great job with compensatory picks and, get more opportunities. And, and in the 5th, 6th round, if you want to take a shot on somebody else, no harm, no foul.
Mike, do you have anything to plug aside from all of your TV appearances? What are you working on right now?
No, ESPN and the
33rd team.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, really proud of that. And we got great teammates there, and try to bring some differentiated content to the discussion as well.
Totally. The content at 33rd team is terrific, and I just love seeing on the social side, on the actual, just the breakdown stuff. You guys do a great job there.
Well, I appreciate it, and you do a great job hosting us every Sunday. And
That's right. All right. Thanks, man. I have to get into the weight room to carry you and Justin Pugh on Sunday. I'm going to go to Detroit and work with Dan Campbell. I'm going to say, listen, I host with Mike Tannenbaum. He said, all right, let's go work out right now. We got to get the stamina there. Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN 33rd team. Thanks so much, buddy.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.